everybody. Hello grade 1-2s. Happy June. I know some of you are joining us for the first time this week, so welcome. We have been doing Sunday school like this over YouTube for about 2 months since before Easter. And even though I don't see you and we can't see each other, I think it's great for us to continue learning stories from the Bible. So today we are going to continue learning about Paul and his missionary adventures. If you want to catch up on the stories that we've told so far, you can go ahead and watch some of our older videos. I have a question for you. Normally, when you are trying to go somewhere, maybe school or church, or going to see a family or a friend, how do you get there? My guess is that most of you are like me and you travel by car or maybe by bus. So we are going to play a quick game where we pretend to travel by different modes of transportation. So since most of us are familiar with driving, let's start there. We can pretend to drive a car. Just pretend, because a lot of us aren't old enough yet. And then if we come across some water, we'll need a boat. So let's get in a boat and we can row across the water. We practiced this last week. Not all boats or not all ships need to be rowed. Some of them use wind or other sources of power to move. What if we want to travel in the air? If you have gone to another country, you might be familiar with traveling in an airplane. So we can pretend to be an airplane. Let's get exercise, get our whole body moving. Okay, what if we want to travel by train? What does that look like? We can go like this, hands out. We can pretend to move the wheels. Chugga, 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 chugga. Okay, we'll do one last one. We're going to pretend to ride a horse. Get on the horse and gallop, like that. So of all those modes of transportation, who remembers which one Paul used for his missionary adventures? Good remembering. So Paul mostly traveled by ship so that he could share the good news to people even if they were separated by water from him. So I'm going to bring out a map that shows us some of the places that Paul has already been. So this is quite a big map, so I don't know if I will be able to get the whole thing on here. Oh dear, that's quite large. Okay, we'll start on this half. I have a little boat for our map. Let's see, you can see that. So this one, it might be hard to say, this says Antioch. And if you might remember, here's our little boat. Antioch is where Paul and Barnabas started. So Paul and Barnabas started there, and the church leaders sent them off. Do you remember why they sent them off? Good remembering. So they sent them off to be missionaries, to go tell other people in other places about Jesus. And so they left, and they traveled, and we're going to flip to this side. Traveled to a place called Philippi, which is what we learned about last week. Who did Paul meet in Philippi? Do you remember? This was our story from last week. They met a woman named Lydia. And what happened when Lydia heard the good news? That's right, she believed in Jesus. And she was baptized, and she told other people about Jesus too. And so now we're going to move our little boat over here to Corinth, which is where our story takes place today. So Paul left the city of Athens and continued traveling to Corinth. And there he met a man named Aquila and his wife Priscilla, who made tents. In Bible times, many people lived in tents. They could carry their tent houses with them wherever they went, or put tents on their roofs to sleep in during the hot summer. Lots of people needed tents, so Priscilla and Aquila were very busy. Since Paul knew how to make tents, he helped Priscilla and Aquila. During the week, they'd work and eat and talk about God together. And then on the Sabbath, Paul went to the synagogue and talked with people there, teaching them that Jesus was God's son. Paul stayed in Corinth with Priscilla and Aquila for many days. When it was time for Paul to leave, his friends Priscilla and Aquila went with him. They all sailed to the city of Cenchreae, then to Ephesus, where Priscilla and Aquila decided to stay and teach people about Jesus. Paul wanted to continue traveling. He couldn't just stay in one place until people everywhere knew the good news about Jesus. So Priscilla and Aquila waved goodbye to their friend Paul as he traveled back to Jerusalem. So I'm going to show you where Ephesus, where Priscilla and Aquila are on a map. So our story starts here in Corinth, where Paul lived with Priscilla and Aquila. And they traveled together over here to Ephesus. Soon, Priscilla and Aquila met another traveling teacher named Apollos. So Priscilla and Aquila made friends with Apollos and taught him everything they had learned from Paul. Before long, Apollos was excitedly spreading the good news about Jesus to everyone in Ephesus. But Apollos didn't want to stop in Ephesus. He wanted to travel and tell people everywhere about Jesus. So Priscilla and Aquila helped Apollos leave Ephesus to spread good news in more places. Because Priscilla and Aquila worked and taught and encouraged other Christians, people for hundreds of miles around got to hear about Jesus. So of course, I have questions for you. First question is, how did Priscilla and Aquila help Paul? Second question, who else did Priscilla and Aquila help? It's really cool. When you read the Bible, every time Priscilla and Aquila are mentioned, someone is hearing the good news about Jesus. In the book of Romans in the Bible, Paul says he's thankful to his friends Priscilla and Aquila. They helped spread the good news about Jesus, even though they started as just tent makers. God wants us to share the good news about Jesus too. It doesn't matter if you're a tent maker, or a doctor, or a missionary, or a kindergartner. Anyone who knows and loves God can spread the good news about Jesus. So we are going to sing a song about spreading the good news. God wants us all to share the news, share the news, share the news. God wants us all to share the news, all the good news about Jesus. Paul was sent out to tell the world, tell the world, tell the world. Paul was sent out to tell the world all the good news about Jesus. Lydia heard and she believed, she believed, she believed. Lydia heard and she believed all the good news about Jesus. Priscilla and Aquila knew, yes they knew, yes they knew. Priscilla and Aquila knew all the good news about Jesus. Now you and I can tell the world, tell the world, tell the world. Now you and I can tell the world all the good news about Jesus. I know that song seems really long, but I think we can learn something from it. When Paul told one person, let's say he told Lydia about Jesus, Paul continued to tell other people, but so did Lydia. And so more and more people got to hear about Jesus, not just because of Paul, but also because of Lydia. And so the same thing happened when Priscilla and Aquila started telling people about Jesus. More and more people got to hear about Jesus. So what good news can we share about Jesus? I want you to think about how can you share that special news. God wants us to share the good news about Jesus. We can be just like Priscilla and Aquila, who shared the good news themselves and also helped other people share their news. So our craft this week will help remind us to tell people about Jesus. So I want you to find a cup, preferably a cup that you can cut up, so maybe something made out of plastic or paper. If you don't have one of those, any sort of container will be okay. And you can decorate it to look like a tent. So you can put paper or fabric over it. You can cut a door into the cup if you can cut the cup. And then I want you to think of 2 or 3 people that you want to tell about Jesus, and you can put them inside the tent. And every day you can pull a name out and remember to pray for them, or if you are talking to them, remember to tell them about Jesus. So I'm going to show you 2 things for this week. This was from our game that we played at the beginning. It has the different types of transportation. So I will leave this if you want to print it out and color it and play with your family. And then this is our Today I Learned. Our story today was from Acts chapter 18, verses 1 through 4, and then 18 through 28. And our verse is still the same verse. It's therefore go and make disciples of all nations, found in Matthew chapter 28, verse 19. So we will leave this for you. Thanks for joining us.